Good afternoon, everyone. We're just about to start. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to our session here at reInvent about SaaS, Software as a Service on AWS. I'm Andrew Sullivan, Business Development Lead for SaaS out of San Francisco.
I'm Emily Tyack, and I lead our programs for partners who have SaaS businesses built on AWS out of Seattle.
And we'll be talking for the next hour about how we enable partners like you to build SaaS on AWS, some best practices and so on. We won't be taking live Q&A during the session. However, we want you to save your questions because at the end of the session, come talk to us after and you can get these very attractive AWS beanies. We have 6, and also many SaaS on AWS stickers. So it wouldn't be a reInvent session without swag, so we've got it. So thanks very much. Wrong button. Okay. So, software as a service, why are we here today? Many of you may already be in the software as a service business or offering a version of it to your customers today. You certainly are likely to be using SaaS in one form or another. We certainly do here at Amazon. So we'll be talking about what the big deal is with SaaS, why SaaS is important to the market of software and information technology and IT, why customers are moving to SaaS, and why we want to help you as APN members also move to SaaS and be successful with AWS behind you. We'll share some best practices, both in terms of designing and building software as a service on AWS, as well as scaling it in the market, marketing it and selling it with us to your customers. We'll share experiences and success stories of partners just like you who have built SaaS on AWS, some of whom you may have seen, some of whom you probably haven't. And finally, we have some new program announcements about how APN can help you successfully build SaaS, including some announcements that were made this morning by Terry. So, what's the big deal with SaaS? We've heard about it for years. It's been offered in the market, certainly even before AWS was around. Why does it matter? First off, it's important to actually have a definition of software as a service. We often get asked by customers and partners, what do we mean by SaaS? Because it could mean multi-tenancy, for example, or it could mean specific features deployed in the AWS cloud or in another cloud. For us, SaaS really is the customer experience and the licensing and delivery model. So Gartner says it's a licensing and delivery model where software is centrally managed and hosted by a provider and available on a subscription or pay-per-use basis. We think of it as that and the customer experience of going to the service, automatically provisioning it, and using it without having to deploy any infrastructure. That's why the customers find this attractive and how we want to support it. So in the market, you may have seen that SaaS deployment has picked up a lot in the last few years, both in general and specifically on the AWS and public clouds. We've heard from many customers that they go to SaaS first when they're thinking about buying new IT solutions. And in fact, research from IDC shows that public cloud users are either using SaaS today or they're planning to deploy it very shortly. In fact, these are a vast majority of public cloud users are already using SaaS. And the reason, of course, is because of the value we talked about, the ease of use, the quick deployment, et cetera, which we'll go into. This also means that the customers that you work with here at AWS are part of an ecosystem who is ready to buy SaaS on AWS. So that's part of why we're building programs to make it easy for you to offer your new SaaS solutions to them. Wrong button. It's not just traditional IT services. There are some specific areas where SaaS is already the majority. And certainly, if you use services like Salesforce, you know that SaaS is already the leader in many categories. This was last year from Forrester. They said SaaS was becoming the leader in categories like e-commerce and CRM, purchasing, and others. But we've seen many additional categories, particularly in the area of DevOps, for example, where SaaS is really becoming the lead because of the convenience and value that it offers to the end user. And so that's what the customers are asking for. This is not pushing it out to the end user. This is the end user coming and saying, we want to buy as SaaS. And why is that? I think there's there's a lot of reasons why you might choose to adopt it as an end user, reasons that we use it as an end user at AWS. But I think 4 of the most important reasons why customers adopt. Number 1 is frictionless onboarding or easy activation, right? The fact that you can do a self-service, you can go to AWS Marketplace and deploy SaaS in minutes. You don't have to do configuration of a SaaS deployment as opposed to configuring an on-premises server, operating system, et cetera. The fact that you can pay as you go. This is a very important principle here at Amazon, of course, that you have very low to no initial costs and you only pay for what you use. Now, that's not the only business model in SaaS for sure, but it's one of the main reasons that end users tend to go to SaaS is because of that pay-as-you-go capability. Rapid innovation. As you know, AWS is a rapid innovator in new services, and we make those available to all of our customers as quickly as we can, and we want to help you do the same thing. Rapid innovation is a major reason why customers choose to go with SaaS. They can get new features immediately rather than wait, for example, for half year or 1 year or more release cycles if they're deploying in a server or if they're deploying in an appliance or even in a virtual machine, which they have to maintain. No need for customers to add any hardware or bandwidth. It simply gets deployed as part of the service. And finally, because you can do all of these things so easily, it makes IT management so much easier, simplifying IT management. And all you have to do is think about some of our leading SaaS providers and compare them to what was there before. The ease of use that SaaS offerings, whether it's in CRM or whether it's in human resources or travel, you name it, is much, much simpler, both for the end user and for the manager. And that's really the main reason why we think customers are going that way.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And it's no coincidence, based on what Andrew was saying, that ISVs, many of you in the room, also increasingly looking to SaaS as the primary or only delivery model for their products. And based on feedback from the ISVs that we're talking to, there are a number of reasons for this shift towards a SaaS-first approach. So based on what Andrew was saying, of course, customer demand is playing a very big part into this shift. As customers are looking more and more towards SaaS as their primary software consumption model, ISVs are responding to this demand. Additionally, software vendors are looking for ways to be more agile and innovative, easily control and release updates, and focus development and support on one version of a product helps to facilitate this agility and innovation. Another benefit of focusing support and development on one version of a product, saving time and money and improving operational efficiency. So based on data from an AWS Commission study of 106 ISVs conducted by Forrester Consulting on behalf of AWS, 84% of the interviewed ISVs realized cost savings related to application maintenance. Along these same lines, SaaS provides a greater ability to control costs and increase margins by leveraging the economies of scale offered by a multi-tenant architecture. And also provides more flexibility in refining pricing strategies. In that same Forrester study that I mentioned earlier, 82% of interviewed SaaS ISVs had SaaS gross margins that were greater than or the same as their on-premises software. And finally, ISVs are moving to SaaS to attract customers in new geographies, different size segments, and new verticals, so using it as a way to innovate on their business and reach new and different customers. And AWS has over 10 years of experience supporting millions of customers and thousands of ISVs who use AWS services and products as the foundation for their successful SaaS businesses, enabling ISVs to truly embrace the positive impacts and benefits of SaaS that we just were talking about. So first, AWS's rapid pace of innovation and the breadth and depth of tools and services available on AWS can facilitate a much faster time to market for products. Additionally, essential to a SaaS product, AWS has the scale, uptime, and availability to respond to continually evolving workloads. By leaving the operational responsibilities to AWS, ISVs are able to reinvest some of that time into features and product innovations to meet their customer demands. And this combination of AWS service innovations and minimization of operational overhead is essential to enabling the innovation that a successful SaaS business requires. Managing and optimizing costs is essential to SaaS environments, and the elasticity and pay-as-you-go pricing of the AWS environment is really well matched to an optimized infrastructure of a multi-tenant load. And very important for you guys and for your customers of a SaaS product want to know that their data is secure and private. And at AWS, security and data privacy is our highest priority. And so your customers benefit from data center and infrastructure security that meet the requirements of the most security-sensitive organizations. And we have over tens of thousands of partners in the AWS Partner Network. So both partners like yourselves who are building next-generation SaaS businesses on AWS, and APN partners who can support product development, business strategy, and growth, like our managed service providers and our competency partners. And finally, SaaS providers often need to reach customers in a broad range of geographies, and AWS is well positioned to support your global expansion as that customer demand changes.
Thanks, Emily. So, AWS has worked with hundreds of partners already to deploy successful SaaS solutions in the marketplace, in the market and AWS Marketplace, some of whom I see here today. We've worked with partners to deploy SaaS for not just the traditional, let's say, DevOps and IT-focused services, but also some specialized verticals as well. For example, Moldex 3D, who uses SaaS to manage injection molding services, and Click, for example, who we'll talk about a little more, who provides SaaS-based visualization of financial data and other data that customers might want to view in an easy-to-view online format. Zaproot, for example, we've worked with to support management of discovery of legal documents in the cloud, as well as, for example, Trend Micro, who we've worked with to support the deep security as a service, Dynatrace, who provide monitoring for SaaS, Okta, who provide a identity and access management service to enable user logins into SaaS on AWS, and many, many more. We'll talk about some of the specifics as we go on today. We would love to work with you to enable you to be as successful as these partners. So one specific success story is Sumo Logic, who we worked with to enable cloud-based machine data analytics to enable enterprises to identify operational issues. Sumo Logic built this service in a cloud-native fashion on AWS because they told us SaaS companies have to be agile. Having AWS allowed us to build our service much faster than if we had to run our own infrastructure stack. We can innovate more rapidly than in less time than our competitors. So we were able to work with Sumo to build a service that really took advantage of some of the innovative solutions that some of the innovative services that we provide in AWS. So one of the things we'll share is some of the best practices, lessons that we've learned from partners like some of the ones we just showed you to build SaaS on AWS. We'll start with best practices in the area of designing and building a SaaS solution. If you've designed solutions for on-premises or solutions for subscriptions, SaaS is a little bit different. There are some things you need to think about in the product management process that are slightly more specific to SaaS, and we'll highlight those. We'll go into a little bit more depth and highlight some partners who've been successful doing so, and then Emily will do the same around marketing and selling your SaaS solution with AWS. This is based on our over 10 years of experience working with ISVs supporting AWS. So when you're designing and building a SaaS product, there's a few specific areas that require focus. First, of course, is product definition. It's more than just taking an existing offering and putting it in the cloud. Sometimes that makes sense to simply move an existing offering to a cloud service, but it really makes more sense, in our opinion, to define a customer experience that is specific to SaaS. Business planning around pricing and around your pricing strategy and your sales and positioning and choosing the appropriate routes to market to support your SaaS offering. And finally, the architecture that you build to support SaaS is, of course, going to be different, and we have many best practices to share there. So at Amazon, of course, we always start with the customer and work backwards. This is a principle that we use when we do all of our product planning. And we really are designing we design our solutions around the customer experience that we think is going to be most compelling. And we would encourage you to do the same thing. In fact, our programs are designed to help you do that. To design, for example, a minimum viable product would be your 1.0 launching SaaS that solves a specific customer problem, and then a roadmap to quickly iterate, take advantage of the fact that you can have rapid innovation in SaaS as opposed to slow release cycles. And then, of course, differentiate from existing offerings. When you're designing that customer experience, customers have told us, as well as analysts that we've worked with, have told us there are some specific areas that are really important to have in your customer experience for SaaS. Number one is agility. We've talked about innovation, but being able to deploy innovative features faster is one of the main reasons customers choose to adopt SaaS as opposed to an on-premises deployment. Security, as we said, security is our job zero. We'll work with you to make it yours too, specifically around taking advantage of the fact that a cloud-based infrastructure can always be kept up to date and reduce the customer risk versus on-premises. But customers choose SaaS largely in part for that reason. Customers choose SaaS also to reduce costs, not just improve IT productivity, but also reduce their total cost of ownership. Because total cost of ownership, of course, includes all of the rest of the infrastructure around an on-premises deployment. SaaS can reduce that. And finally, reducing complexity via simplifying the IT experience and simplifying the user experience. And that's exactly what Qlik did. So Qlik offers a service called QlikView, which provides visual data analytics. They built a version called QlikSense Cloud, a SaaS on AWS, which provides visual data analytics in the cloud. You can see here it's in a browser or on a phone. Really nice way to do data visualization of whether it's financial data or operational data or otherwise, completely accessible from a web browser. And this is built on AWS. They built this for the purpose of simplifying their customer experience. And in fact, that's what they told us. We wanted to make it as simple as possible for customers to get insights into their data. So they deployed Qlik Cloud as a SaaS model to do that. In fact, they were able to deploy very quickly with us. Another way that we helped them simplify, they were able to get a beta into market in only 18 weeks, building on our Amazon EC2, S3, CloudWatch, and our Route 53. They also worked with one of our premier consulting partners, Slalom, who helped them build this multi-tenant service. This allowed them also to release a product to market in only 6 months. So it's very possible to get a service out there quickly and then enhance it with new features and yet design it for simplicity for your customer. It's also very important to think about SaaS as a business model. It's a little bit different from, for example, recurring revenue from recurring renewals from a perpetual plus model. So a different approach to pricing and go-to-market is really key. Of course, you want to think about in your cost and pricing models, you might design a usage or subscription-based model, and we support all of those. We don't just support usage, but make sure to consider the infrastructure cost in those prices, potentially differentiate tiers so you can offer additional value to higher-end customers. Think about the addressable market. SaaS is a way to reach new customers, going beyond an existing customer base. This may be, for example, taking advantage of our AWS Marketplace to reach an all-new audience that a direct sales force isn't in touch with. It is important when you're thinking about revenue and margins. We've showed you experience from our partners who were able to, in fact, improve margins as they built SaaS. But if you're moving from an offering that is, for example, perpetual renewals, you might have a short-term drop in revenue as a customer moves from perpetual to SaaS, so it's important to plan on that. And finally, it's very important to think about as your sales compensation program to align to consumption-based or subscription-based pricing so that your account teams and your marketing teams are incented to move the customer to this new business model. And a great example of that is Trend Micro. Trend built deep security as a service to solve a real problem that customers have workloads in AWS which need to be protected against malware, intrusions, and malicious applications. And so as they built this, of course, they already offer deep security as a standard offering, but they built this with pay-per-use pricing and made it available on AWS Marketplace. So it's very easy for an AWS customer to consume this exactly the same way that they consume it, that they consume the rest of their AWS services. And Trend, what they told us was it was their customer base who really wanted them to move to the AWS cloud. And in fact, in addition to being able to offer on Marketplace their service and make it very easy to deploy, they were able to beat existing security performance by working with AWS. So you're able to both simplify and improve your business model and also improve your end user performance. Now, as you're doing product planning, you also have to think about your strategy for the architecture for SaaS. And this is not a detailed architecture talk, but we wanted to highlight some of the specific knowledge that our SAS Factory has around building SaaS. So if you're building a new product, for example, you want to think about, are you starting from scratch? Are you transforming your business to move to a SaaS model, or are you migrating existing customers to an all-new offering? Or in many cases, you might have an existing offering where customers have a demand to move to SaaS for reasons of agility, speed, performance, et cetera. And so you might want to have a migration strategy, and we've worked with many partners and customers as well to migrate existing workloads to SaaS. You might, for example, be supporting a hybrid model. We've worked with a number of partners who have a hybrid model where, for example, you have some workloads and some services on premises in a server or appliance-style deployment, and then run that with cloud in parallel, because in many cases, different needs might be addressed by one or the other. Or you might be in a situation where you have SaaS already, and you need to optimize it for better performance and cost effectiveness. And our SAS Factory team has worked with many partners to do that. So the SAS Factory will tell you a little bit more about the programs going forward, but we have a number of reference architectures that really focus on solving these problems. Specifically in the area we talked about optimization, for example, we share best practices around migration from existing offerings, billing and metering, both taking advantage of our AWS Marketplace, as well as your own billing and metering engines. Serverless, taking advantage of Lambda. Identity and access management, which is critical to supporting SaaS, as well as management, providing a proper overview so that you can see the performance of the service. And we've worked with a number of partners who've really taken advantage of our SaaS enablement framework, the examples that we share for the SAS Factory. Here, XM is a leading provider of database performance management of a service. They're based in Seoul, Korea. They work with many financial service customers there. And they told us that the SaaS enablement framework and specialized consulting, ProServe from AWS, helped them immensely with preparing their SaaS business. Again, this was deployed for high availability as a service in our Seoul region. So these are some examples of how partners have been able to design and build using our capabilities. Now, Emily, tell us about how they can market and sell.
Great, thanks, Andrew. So we'll talk a little bit about just some best practices we've learned from our partners in marketing and selling a SaaS application. And then we'll jump into some of our programs that Terry announced today, and we'll get into much more detail on those. So once there is a SaaS product generally available to customers, it's time to find the customer and sell the product, sell the service. So based on our experience and talking to partners, we wanted to share a few of the critical considerations for marketing and selling a SaaS application. This is by no means a deep dive on or a comprehensive list on these best practices, rather a snapshot of some of the more critical ones that we wanted to share with you guys. So the benefits a customer expects through SaaS can create some unique challenges to finding and keeping customers using your product. For example, frictionless onboarding goes hand in hand with frictionless offboarding, right? If they don't find value in your product or it's not affecting the business outcome that they were expecting, then they will churn and they'll leave from the product. Additionally, customers expect you to manage the infrastructure layer underneath the application and the operational aspects of it flawlessly. And with SaaS, it's all about selling value and services rather than selling a product in a single point in time. So we're going to talk about how these principles apply to three parts of the business. Identifying the right route to market, so finding your customer, business metrics, evaluating the health of your business, and then customer success, so keeping your customers. So routes to market, if you have an existing software business and are transitioning to SaaS, it doesn't have to be as disruptive as you might think to your routes to market. You can sell through your existing channels, or you can expand your sales channels to reach more and new customers. And customers do expect certain things with SaaS, like Andrew was mentioning, which may fit better with an online direct channel, and there are many ways you can build out your routes to market. One is through our AWS Marketplace, which has built an innovative SaaS billing API and SaaS billing service. So I'll talk a little bit about that here. There's much more data and much more information available about this online in other sessions this week as well. But at a high level, AWS Marketplace for SaaS targets AWS customers specifically, and it simplifies procurement for the customer. So buyers can easily find and subscribe to SaaS products all within the marketplace, within AWS Marketplace, and are charged for the product all within their AWS bill. So it consolidates that procurement process for them. And sellers and ISVs can make their product available against two different models. So the first is pay-as-you-go subscriptions, where buyers can pay as they go based on consumption of the product, or prepaid subscriptions or contracts where customers pay in advance for a certain amount of usage. For example, monthly, 1, 2, or 3-year subscriptions or contracts. And since launching last re:Invent, over 250 SaaS subscriptions or listings either through SaaS subscriptions or contracts have been launched on AWS Marketplace since last re:Invent. So one example of a partner who successfully incorporated AWS Marketplace into their go-to-market strategy is Cloud Endure, who have a disaster recovery and live migration product. And this product is listed as both a subscription and contract listing on AWS Marketplace. And they found a number of different benefits by listing their product through AWS Marketplace. The first is solving billing challenges that enabled them to scale. So customers were asking them for monthly billing options, but Cloud Endure wasn't previously able to execute against this in a consistent way at scale for customers. So they turned to AWS Marketplace to solve this use case and meet their customer needs and enable them to scale more. The second benefit they found was faster customer onboarding. So customers wanted and were asking for that consolidated billing on the AWS bill. And by consolidating that procurement under AWS versus adding an additional vendor, it can significantly speed up that procurement process at the customer as well. And then the third benefit was they found that customers were starting to execute a self-service POC through their SaaS offering on AWS. And then they were able to easily expand use of that product to a production level after confirming that the solution met what they were looking for and they were going to be able to achieve the business outcomes they were expecting. And then finally, AWS Marketplace gave Cloud Endure the confidence in a self-service approach and self-service capabilities so that customers could use their solution in a complex environment without assistance directly from them. So that enabled them to reinvest resources they otherwise would have spent towards customer onboarding back into their product and back into the features and the feature roadmap that they were building out for their customers. So we'll pivot a little bit to SAS Business Metrics here. And with the SaaS business, I don't think it's a surprise. We're a very data-driven company here at AWS. It's vital to stay on top of the metrics that reflect the health of your business, and valuable to identify those metrics that are sort of canaries in the coal mine to the health of your business and help making smart data-driven decisions. There are a number of metrics here and others that are not on here that are critical to the health of a SaaS business, and we're just going to focus on a couple here today. So first, we'll take a look at the cost to acquire a customer and the customer lifetime value of a customer, or the ability to monetize that customer. So the cost to acquire a customer is the cost spent acquiring customers divided by the number of customers acquired within that given time period. And the customer lifetime value is the prediction of the estimated average gross revenue that a customer will generate. And so you can use the ratio of these two metrics to evaluate whether you're able to make more money from your customers than it costs to acquire them, right? A key metric to the health of your business. And in a healthy and balanced SaaS business, the cost to acquire a customer should be significantly smaller than the overall customer lifetime value. And monitoring this ratio can help indicate when changes need to be made to a business. So whether the ratio is looking good and double down and accelerating against that model, or whether it's time to slow down and tweak some of the pieces of that model. So whether it's time to look to a new lead generation source, among a number of other potential tweaks that could be made. And we'll also dive into a little bit on customer churn. And that's directly related to customer lifetime value as well. So churn rate, or customer churn rate, is the rate at which customers or subscribers stop using a product within a given time period. And customer success is all about retaining and expanding usage of your existing customers. So, and because of that, churn rate is one of the most important metrics to measure this and the day-to-day health of a SaaS business. So as I touched on before, I'll say it again. With SaaS, it's all about selling a value in a service versus a product in a single point in time. And with SaaS and recurring revenue models, revenue will continue to generate over the customer's lifetime. So if they're happy and continuing to see value, they'll continue to stick to the product. And conversely, if the customer isn't seeing the business benefits they're expecting, they'll churn, and you'll lose out on the investment you made to acquire them. So a couple other key points about churn. So it's many times more expensive to acquire a customer than to retain an existing customer. And it's helpful to target or identify a target churn rate. And your churn rate might vary depending on who your target customer is, so whether it's a small business or an enterprise customer. And the goal is to get your expansion and cross-sell revenue from existing customers greater than the lost revenue from your churn customers. So that's a negative churn. And one other thing here is it's important to get ahead of churn, right? So building a predictive model that helps identify at-risk customers so you can proactively target them and reach out to them and try to prevent that churn from happening. And then last but not least, digging into the root cause of why your customers may not be sticking around. So calling customers, doing exit surveys, things of that nature to help get a better sense of what's driving that churn rate. So we'll pivot a little bit to positives. So some critical sort of considerations about building a successful customer success facet to the business. So investing and focusing on customer success is critical to avoiding and reducing churn. So we'll talk through just a couple ways, some best practices here. So first is focusing on business outcomes your product helps your customer achieve. So customers are buying a product for a specific reason and to achieve a specific business outcome. So important to make sure this is captured, included in your marketing and selling motions, and that the product effectively addresses this and achieves this for the customer. So speed matters, right? Speed matters in a SaaS business. Andrew was mentioning a lot of that, and it's true here as well. So customers expect easy sign-up, onboarding, and quick time to value. So getting them to that time to value as quickly as possible is very important. And making sure that feedback is only a click away for your customers, right? So keeping customers engaged by making feedback easy to provide and then listening and being reactive to that feedback. And then investing in a quality customer support team, right? So really looking at this customer support element as a revenue opportunity. So engaging customers and looking for cross and upsell and expansion opportunities and building out a quality success team that is devoted to that. So not just getting customers onboarded, quickly time to value, but also focusing on identifying and proactively pursuing those cross and upsell and expansion opportunities. And then finally, focusing on building brand advocates. So best leads come from happy customers, right? So focusing on building a robust ecosystem of brand advocates who use and are finding value in your product. So one partner who has really made customer success one of the foundations of their SaaS business is Treasury Data's customer data platform. So as you can see here, there's a quote from one of their customers, one of their brand advocates, who was obviously very satisfied with their product. And Treasury Data has made customer success one of the core pieces of their business in a couple of ways. So they have a full customer support and success team working with customers day in and day out, 24/7 around the world with technical support. They execute regular Net Promoter Score and customer satisfaction surveys. And then they're also focusing on monitoring some of those critical metrics that we were talking about. So churn rate. What's the churn rate of their customers? What's their utilization and consumption of their customers? So that can be one of the sort of predictive models of churn and one of the canaries in the coal mine to help you identify and prevent that churn. And then also customer referrals. So they're seeing that a large number of their new customers are referrals from existing customers, so it's an indicator that they're doing a good job building those brand advocates for their product. Great, so we're gonna pivot now and talk to you guys about some of the new programs that we're launching in 2018. So Terry pre-announced a lot of these earlier today. We're gonna go into to more depth here. So we have over 10 years of experience supporting ISVs building their SaaS business on AWS, and we're building on this momentum by investing even more in ISVs and specifically SaaS in 2018. So super excited to tell you guys about two new initiatives launching in 2018. So we have the AWS SAS Factory, which provides more technical resources, best practices, and dev and test funding to help ISVs get to SaaS on AWS with the right architecture quickly and efficiently. And so many of the topics that we covered at a very high level today will be covered in much more detail in different initiatives available through the SAS Factory that we're building out. And then we're also expanding our go-to-market support through our AWS SAS Accelerate program, which includes more funding for lead generation and customer proof of concepts and investments in field alignment and joint selling. So Andrew's going to talk to you a little bit more about SAS Factory.
Yeah, so AWS SAS Factory, some of you may be familiar with this if you've worked with some of our solution architects. SAS Factory has been available as kind of an invitation-only program, but we are working now to expand it to a much broader set of ISVs in the first half of 2018. That's our pre-announcement today. What we're doing is really extending our experience working with our hundreds of ISVs who've launched SaaS to enable not just technical expertise, but also business expertise so that you can design business models that are successful, you can build pricing and selling strategies that make sense for your customers, and also think about things like global expansion, taking advantage of routes to market that didn't exist for your pre-SaaS offerings. So AWS SAS Factory, we say this is prescriptive support and guidance, but it's listening to you. We're not just telling you what to do. We're sharing examples of what's really worked well as architectures that really make sense for scalable and cost-effective software as a service on AWS. So SAS Factory is building on what we've called the SAS enablement framework, kind of an eye chart here showing some of our web content that's there now. We have a number of detailed white papers available as well as examples of reference architectures. I shared earlier in the design and build section some of the reference architectures that we have around migration, around designing for scale, auto-scaling, around security, identity and access management, et cetera. We will be introducing as well a webinar series where we can share those examples in more detail so that you can take that in and make those available. You can build your SaaS roadmap based on this, because we know that every SaaS implementation will be a little bit different, but we want yours to be well architected. We want it to pass our well architected reviews and to be very cost effective for your customer. And we've already been publishing a number of detailed blog posts around recommendations that we make around how to design them. I will not be able to cover in great detail, but just a few of the ones that we've recently launched. A quick start around SaaS identity, which I'll touch on in a little bit more detail next. Guidance around how to calculate tenant costs. This is very important because you need to know your costs in order to price appropriately and manage your margins. Particularly if you offer service on a pay-per-use basis, or actually even if you offer service on a subscription basis, you really need to understand the specific amount of infrastructure and related spend that's associated with your customers so that you can pass that on appropriately and build a healthy margin business. We have recommendations around testing SaaS solutions on AWS, including taking advantage of some of our advanced testing suites at AWS and serverless. One of them, we've had a number of partners who've been very successful building on Lambda, for example. And so we have specific recommendations around how to build serverless SaaS applications. And finally, migration, of course, is a top priority, and so we have recommendations there. We just launched in the last few weeks, Judah Bernstein, who is giving a talk a little bit later about some related topics. Just launched a quick start around SaaS identity and isolation with Amazon Kognito. Amazon Kognito is our advanced identity and access management solution. We introduced this quick start to make it easy for you to deploy a multi-tenant container-based application in a VPC across 2 availability zones. This takes advantage of Kognito, also Lambda for on-demand analysis, our API gateway, and of course ECS, our Elastic Container Service. So what you can do with this, you can see all the moving parts associated with onboarding tenants, controlling access to applications, managing user roles. Roles-based access control is very important when you deploy SaaS, so that both managing user roles across tenants and within tenants, limiting cross-tenant access, and managing the individual environments of your tenants. So this quick start is something we've recently launched. We'll be launching several more of these over the next year. And coming in throughout 2018, we'll be launching additional learning modules, as well as boot camps and in-person workshops for qualified partners where we actually work directly with you to build your roadmap and to enable you to put in place a well-architected design for SaaS. We've worked with many of the partners we've worked with, like Trend Micro, for example. We helped them design a service that was optimized for the deployment, for deployment with SaaS management. And so we'll be also launching boot camps where we can share these architectural best practices in more detail in a setting more like this. Additional quick starts, white papers, blog posts, et cetera, of course, will also be coming throughout 2018. We plan to release those, and so it's very important to keep an eye on our SAS Factory content throughout the next year. Emily.
Thanks. So I'll talk a little bit about the AWS SAS program. So this is for, oh, there's my mic. So this is for partners who have validated solutions against our SaaS best practices that our SA team has put together. So we're launching the AWS SAS Accelerate program along with that SaaS validation process that connects SaaS ISVs to resources and tools to support product growth and expansion. So some of those resources and benefits include use of AWS branding to demonstrate that solution validation, promotional AWS credits to support customer proof of concepts and lead generation, engagement and alignment with our APN consulting partners like our MSPs and our competency partners to develop joint solutions, and then additional go-to-market support for AWS Marketplace SaaS listings. Additionally, we're investing in field alignment for partners in this program and joint selling, and are putting more ISV success managers, so people who are responsible for helping customers and AWS field sellers engage the right partners for the right opportunities, and we'll be working closely with the partners in this program as well.
So this isn't all we'll be covering on SaaS here at re:Invent. We have a number of additional sessions that are more technical in nature, 2 today, one by Judah Bernstein and one by Todd Golding. Please check out the multi-tenant health featuring New Relic at 4 p.m. today here at MGM, and SaaS and OpenID Connect around multi-tenant identity and isolation at 5:30 p.m. here on MGM. And if you're still here on Friday, Deconstructing SaaS is a deep dive in building multi-tenant applications on AWS. Again, all 3 of these are more technical, but I would encourage you to participate in all of these sessions as you build your roadmap for SaaS.
Great. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We'll end with just a few key takeaways. So the first, APN, we really want to extend our technical knowledge and best practices, like Andrew was mentioning, from what we've learned from our partners and through our experience, and extend that to help you guys build and optimize your SaaS businesses on AWS. And then we also want to support your expansion through go-to-market activities and alignment with our AWS field sellers. So if you're designing and building or optimizing your SaaS product, we encourage you to check out the AWS SAS Factory. And we also have an interest list as well for all things SaaS that we'll be sending out invites to webinars and things of that nature. And then if you're looking to grow your SaaS solution, please fill out our interest form for the AWS SAS Accelerate program to stay up to date as more details and the application process is released on that. So we're excited and honored to play a part in your SaaS journey. We hope you check out these programs, and we also hope you stick around and ask us some questions and tell us about your business and get some hats and stickers.